Welcome, folks. Happy Cyber Monday. Black Friday apparently eclipsed all records. They sold over $3 billion worth of online goods in one day, and they're all happy about that. And now cyber means they get it again online. I'm not quite sure. They ought to just have a big weekend and say, look, everything's on sale for a week or for a month or whatever, and come buy it. But everybody's happy. The merchants are happy. The stock market is up, and everything's good.
That's a good thing. Did you buy it?
I don't buy anything. I'm not buying anything. Well, what do I need? I don't need anything.
You don't. It's a little bah humbug this time of year. Yeah, but it's a little bah. Just saying.
I've got stuff I haven't taken out of the bags yet from years gone by.
Just rewrap last year's sweater.
Yeah. Hey, the people in Miami are rejoicing the fact that that wicked man is dead. Fidel Castro held a stranglehold of freedom in Cuba for half a century. He crushed his opponents, the church, locked up people, was a brutal dictator, and now Donald Trump is about to take office, and many hope he will push Cuba toward Cuba Libre.
Well, for now, though, the Cuban government has banned public music and dancing for 9 days to honor Castro. Dale Hurd explains what could come next.
Fidel Castro is proving to be as divisive in death as he was in life, dividing the world over exactly what he was. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called the brutal communist dictator a remarkable leader who served his people. Irish President Michael Higgins said Castro was for freedom and the oppressed. And the Washington Post called Castro a spiritual beacon before reportedly changing the headline to political beacon. Cuban-American Congresswoman Ileana Ross-Lehtinen has a much different view.
The truth is that he was a sadistic murderer who brought great suffering to the 11 million people of Cuba. He should not be revered. He should be reviled.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz, whose father fled Cuba and whose aunt was jailed and tortured by Castro, said the U.S. should not send a representative to the funeral.
The road to Havana paved with glory for rebel chieftain Fidel Castro.
Fidel Castro came to power promising a socialist utopia. He created an impoverished island prison. Before Castro, Cuba had one of the higher living standards in the world. After Castro, it is one of the world's poorest, most oppressed nations. On the streets of Havana Sunday, it was eerily quiet. In Miami, the city built by Cuban exiles, exuberance. During his decades in power, Fidel Castro was a source of suffering for millions, sending his opponents to prison or to their deaths, forcing Cubans into exile and separating families. And Cubans in Miami know another Castro is still in power. Raul Castro, Fidel's younger brother and president, has been running the country since at least 2008.
The repression continues, the lack of freedom continues.
After Raul, the heir apparent is 56-year-old Miguel Diaz-Canel, a Castro loyalist, with the public image of a dull bureaucrat. What's next in U.S.-Cuba relations? President Obama worked for closer diplomatic ties, but that's a move President-elect Donald Trump seems likely to change.
We will cancel Obama's one-sided Cuban deal made by executive order if we do not get the deal we want and the deal that people living in Cuba and here deserve.
Trump, in a statement, called Castro a brutal dictator who oppressed his own people for nearly 6 decades. Fidel Castro's legacy is one of firing squads, theft, unimaginable suffering, poverty, and the denial of fundamental human rights. In his statement, President Obama avoided praising the dictator, simply saying that history will judge. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thanks, Dale. Well, history will judge. He was a monster and lived in some degree of luxury while his people suffered. I talked to one of the people. I think they put him in a box. They tried to kill him, who founded a group called Cuba Independent and Free. Libertad Democratia, I believe, I forget the name, but in any event, we tried to help, but he was one of the dissidents against Castro. The deal is, though, President Obama bent over backwards to give the Cubans whatever they asked for and got nothing in return. And Trump says, I'm going to get a better deal. What he wants is religious freedom. What he wants is the release from prison of the many, many thousands of people held in Castro's prisons and some semblance of democracy in that island. And I believe that the spread of totalitarian dictatorship has come out of Cuba. The Cubans are remarkably intelligent people. They have been leaders all over Latin America, and they have spread revolution throughout the entire hemisphere. But Raul Castro is still hanging around, but he's an old man, and I don't know, the man is coming in his place. But it's time right now for us to insist on democracy and say, look, you're at our southern border, we'll give you all kinds of trade concessions. There are farmers that want to trade grain with them. There are oil companies that want to trade oil with them. There are travel companies and hotel companies that want to set up trading, airline passengers and so forth, which is all good. But the Cuban people have got to be set free, and now's the chance to do it. So, ladies and gentlemen, pray for that deal. And I believe when it's final, the dust settles, we're going to see a renewed religious revival in Cuba that will perhaps astound the world. Well, Fidel Castro's death could also be a big impact on the future of the Cuban church. John Jessup has that.
That's right, Pat. Many are hopeful that his death could pave the way for greater freedoms for the Cuban church. Heather Sells has that story.
In recent years, Cuban churches have become known for incredible growth in the midst of poverty and an oppressive regime. Pastor Nestor is typical. He lives in a 2-room apartment with his wife. His church meets in a classroom-sized room where the congregation overflows.
One of the things that has made us grow in faith has been the limitations and the difficulties.
In response to building restrictions, Cuban Baptists and Assemblies of God churches have seen house churches take off. And in the midst of scarce resources, a hunger for the gospel is evident across the island. It's why churches typically pack out on Sunday mornings.
People here don't care how comfortable they are. They could be exhausted from working all day and they will sit on a bag of rocks, a stitched up chair, or stand the whole service, and they're okay with that.
Under the presidency of Raul Castro, restrictions on churches have relaxed slightly. They can now more easily hold public events and evangelize. Cuban exile and humanitarian Teo Baboon says Fidel Castro's death could open up more opportunities, noting that the dictator crushed religious freedom. Castro was known for exiling believers and banning public displays of faith. His brother, Raul, is known more for his pragmatism and is considered less antagonistic towards the church.
We hope that the Cuban government feels freer to move more progressively towards religious freedoms.
But there's also fear that Raul Castro will roll back some of the new freedoms to prevent anyone from taking advantage of his brother's death. And there's concern that under the new Trump administration, travel to Cuba will tighten up again. That could slow down a growing partnership between U.S. and Cuban churches. Southern Baptist missions expert Jason Carlisle says improved U.S. relations with Cuba have encouraged missions.
Any leader who's excited, who's trying to find where to be involved in the world or how to take his church to an exciting piece of Christianity, they think of Cuba.
For now, Cuban pastors and U.S. mission leaders are cautious and yet optimistic, as the Cuban church has already proved that it can not only survive, but flourish under tough conditions. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Thanks, Heather. Well, back here at home, more conservatives are raising red flags against the idea of Donald Trump making Mitt Romney his Secretary of State. Trump advisor Kellyanne Conway went public this weekend saying the voters who elected Trump would, quote, feel betrayed by a Romney pick.
He went out of his way to hurt Donald Trump. He gave 2 speeches that I can recall in this calendar year, and they were both about Donald Trump.
Donald Trump is a phony.
Conway's opposition to Romney is also said to be supported by Steve Bannon, the conservative media executive who will serve as Trump's White House senior advisor. Trump held a privately held meeting with Romney to discuss the possibility of joining his administration. He is also considering former UN Ambassador John Bolton and former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani for the position. Pat, back to you.
Well, you know, I think it would be a big mistake. I'm with Kellyanne on this one. I think the people who supported Trump would just feel betrayed. I mean, Romney, it was gratuitous what he did. He just came right out with no provocation whatsoever, and he said Trump is a phony. And then he actively campaigned against him. The top job in the government, the next in line, if you look at the constitutional precedents, the Secretary of State is extremely important. And Trump cannot count on Romney. They don't know what he'll do. He's a very, very competent businessman, very skilled, an excellent leader. He put together Bain Capital and other deals. But then, you know, Trump said he looks like he's out of central casting, and that indeed he does. He's very handsome, and he has a lovely wife and all of that. But I think Trump would make a big mistake, but I'm sure not telling him what to do. He can do whatever he wants to do. But I think those who were the hard Trumpies along the way would think you have stabbed us. But the one that's being talked about now is General Petraeus. He would be a terrific guy, despite the fact that he had a little dust up on some classified information he gave to his girlfriend and biographer. But nevertheless, he is a highly competent man, as is John Bolton, as is Mayor Rudy Giuliani. So he's got three people he can talk about, and I think when it's all finished, it's going to wind up being Petraeus. John?
Pat, Wisconsin election officials are working on plans for a possible recount of the state's results from the presidential election. Green Party candidate Jill Stein made the request for the recount there, as well as in Pennsylvania and Michigan. And Hillary Clinton's campaign has joined Stein's recount effort. But Clinton's lawyer said her team has found no evidence the election results were manipulated. Donald Trump responded by saying Clinton only won more of the popular vote because of the millions of people who voted illegally. And he's calling those who want to recount, quote, crybabies. Pat?
You remember all the fuss that went on when Trump said, well, I'm not sure I'm going to support the person who wins the election. I've got to see. And everybody just went ballistic. The president dumped on him. The first lady dumped on him. Everybody was on him. Now, who is the crybaby? Who is contesting the election? None other than the Democrats. And the whole thing is a put-up job. I don't know what this third party Jill Stein's doing, but she's like a cat's paw for Hillary Clinton. Clinton says, well, I want to promote unity. I've conceded and so forth and so on. But by the way, if I can get in the back door, maybe something will happen. There is no way that somebody should come in months after an election when we're trying to get together a cabinet and get together a team to manage this great nation, and to have somebody ask for a recount that would put the election in doubt for months on end. This is not the way to be a patriotic American. John?
Pat, turning overseas, for nearly a week, major fires have spread across Israel, scorching hundreds of homes. Israeli officials tell CBN News arson contributed to a majority of those blazes. And across Arabic social media, many are celebrating the destruction. But as Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, help has come from a number of countries and organizations, including CBN's Operation Blessing International.
The scope of the fires has been enormous, with more than 75,000 Israelis evacuated from their homes. The fires have destroyed nearly 1,000 dwellings and scorched more than 10,000 acres.
These are the most severe fires that have taken place across the country in 4 major areas.
Israel police spokesman Mickey Rosenfeld said Haifa was hardest hit,
which altogether was a total of 6 fires that almost took place simultaneously in the city of Haifa. And therefore it was suspicious the way the fires began, which led us to believe and led us to carry out operations and find altogether more than 23 suspects that were involved in fires, not just in Haifa but also across Israel as well.
This surveillance footage shows one arsonist caught in the act. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu labeled many of the fires ravaging Israel arson terrorism. Police say 3 of the 4 major fires were deliberately set. Arab social media played a big part.
This is a phase which is unfortunately ignited some of the fires. We've seen suspects that have been active on social media, putting out information, calling upon others to carry out and start fires.
But several countries sent firefighting planes and equipment to douse the flames, while other organizations helped the people who suffered on the ground.
Every time there is an emergency, there is some gaps, like small holes that we can fit in and help the families.
Diego Traverso directs Operation Blessing Israel.
In those small gaps, we were able to provide blankets, some shoes. Today, actually, we're heading there again and distributing some food packages for the families.
Traverso says the fires surprised many families.
They were really devastated. They didn't want to talk, and they were just sitting down, going through, some old pictures, burned books, all your memories. It's like you don't have any time to escape. So it was like, in a matter of seconds even, the house got on fire because the winds were so strong.
Traverso says their aim is to help.
We're here to serve the community. No matter if you are Christian, Muslim, Jewish, if you're a human being and you're in need, you're our brother, and we want to help you.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Pat, nothing like a helping hand when it's needed most.
Operation Blessing is there because we love the Jewish people, but we love those people who are suffering wherever they are. And if you want to help Operation Blessing in this particular time, what a wonderful thing at Christmas that you can help somebody. It's Operation Blessing, Disaster Relief Fund, CBN Center, Virginia Beach. So that'd be a nice way to give a special Christmas gift to help the people of Israel. I've been there, and they're so proud of their forests. They make it a national thing. The little children go out and plant trees on a Arbor Day. I mean, the trees are so important to reclaim the desert. And you go into those forests where it was blistering hot, and then you go into those things there after a few years, and it's cool and pleasant, and there are birds, and it's just lovely. And to see them damaged, it's a crime against humanity, because that desert is going to bloom like a rose, and those trees are very important. And, of course, a lot of houses here, too. But arson, it's just, it's awful. This business of fighting back and forth, the Arabs not the Arabs, but the radical Muslims are just intent on causing trouble. And we have people around this country that are intent on stirring up trouble, and we just don't need that. We love to live at peace. And that word shalom has such a deep meaning now. Arabs say salam, the Jews say shalom, but it means peace, and that's really to have peace. Jesus said, "My peace I leave with you."